And hi everybody on LinkedIn. Sorry for like the short hiccup here. Gene will join us in a second. My name is Karsten. I'm a CIO advisor with Lean 42, and you are watching or listening to Lean 42 live on LinkedIn or one of our recordings. The uh, our discussion here really is for IT leaders, enterprise architects, practitioners, and also bridging the gap between business, strategy, but also IT execution. Today is a more informal discussion. You can also write into the chat of LinkedIn and ask questions there. We can embed them as we speak. It really is today about bringing together the community, sharing experiences, and so we do have this as an upcoming series with multiple other experts. Today we are very happy to have Stefan Malich with us. Um, Stefan and I know each other from some work that we did at a big energy corporation. And today, Stefan will tell us a little bit more about large-scale cloud transformations and projects there. So welcome, Stefan, and welcome, Gene.
Thank you. Hi, Stephen.
So happy to also have you, Gene. And but let's get this kicked off with Stefan. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, so first of all, Gene and Karsten, thank you very much for the invitation. So my name is Stefan Malich. I'm an architect in the first place, and I'm specialized on architectural change, which means for me, I'm supporting people and organizations, improving their way they design, evaluate, document, and implement architectures. So that is my focus for some time. And we will see in a few minutes that also this cloud transformation is, from my perspective, also a major architectural change to an organization.
True. So I know kind of like everybody kind of like talks about cloud and like a lot of organizations use it to some extent. So can you tell me a little bit more? How did you get in touch with the cloud topic?
So actually, I got in touch in 2013. So I was working for a big company, and together with a colleague, we were leading a program in which two data rooms were supposed to be decommissioned. So we were just talking about, let's say, the old data center view. We were talking about two data rooms. And actually, we ran into a lot of stuff, that is solved with the cloud today. So, for example, lack of transparency, missing flexibility, high cost, and, for example, also a lack in getting infrastructure elements provided, and so on. So, and that was the trigger for this organization to really rethink their hosting strategy and set up a dedicated cloud strategy, which we then presented to the managing directors. And out of that, we initiated a major transformation program, which I led then for 2 years in 2014 and 15. And within that program, we integrated the public cloud to this organization from an end-to-end perspective. And that was
Wow.
basically my starting point for getting in touch with this cloud topic. And after that, I was continuously supporting organization going and moving to the cloud.
So, quick question. When you were putting together that program or multiple projects, did you have a digital transformation office that you kind of formed in your EA organization that was just around any projects that the company was doing would come to you that wanted to automate, or did kind of on a more formal scale, I guess, like a PMO only? I'm sorry, that
Specific
was a
for the
yes?
cloud, yes.
Yeah, specific for the cloud.
So first of all, there was from the customer's perspective, and with customers I mean then programs and projects, there was clearly a pressure on the IT organization to provide services much more faster and also provide innovative services and so on. So that was from this organization to customer perspective. And what we did, and so we set up a small team, which we then grew across those 2 years into some sort of cloud competence center.
Oh, okay.
But at that point in time, so the program was, let's say, a small team, and we picked up then people who were interested in getting into the topic and then so on. And then we started basically to first migrate applications, transform applications, and so on. So you need to consider when you're in an environment where, for example, there is an outsourcing partner with that organization, that will always be then some political situation, right? Because you will, of course, take then some value from the outsourcing provider and so on. And for this organization, this was the right approach. Of course, there might be other organizations in other contexts, which might have other approaches here.
So did you
Excellent.
also, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
did you also have in your team then, did you have like business architects to work on the capability and process side, and then solution architects? So you had a full-fledged program.
So we had business architects on board, although they weren't officially named like business architects, right? Because in the end, what we wanted to achieve and finally achieved is a transformation then of the IT organization.
Oh,
because
okay.
when you move into the cloud and you do that on large scale, I think we need to talk about this one.
Yeah, I do have a question on that.
It requires some change of the IT organization. And when you then consider the processes, the governance of the IT organization, then we definitely also change then the business architecture of that organization.
Yeah,
Cool.
so thanks, Stefan. I think there's two things that I want to come back with that you mentioned in like right in the beginning, and with your long history of like 10 plus years now already in that area. So one is kind of like you mentioned cloud strategy. I want to come back to that in a second. But the other thing you mentioned kind of like, and just repeated it, with like the large scale.
Yes.
So I think there is a difference between just a cloud transformation or some. So what is, in your point, kind of like the specifics about like a large scale, which like requires a program that you just talked about and things like that. So how do you define that?
Yeah. So that's an important point. So of course, you can go into the cloud and you can just, for example, jump on one software as a service provider, then you're in the cloud. But when I talk about this large scale, I'm thinking of organizations who go into the cloud with not one or a few, but with many applications. They most probably take whole landscapes into the cloud. So you could also think of an existing data center. So whenever the data center is downsized or even completely decommissioned, that is, from my perspective, a large scale transformation. And then transformation is what I referred to earlier. You take this cloud topic to a level where you really need to change the organization. You need to change the processes, the governance, the tooling, and stuff like that. And so that is really then what Jean referred to. You are changing then also the business architecture and the application architecture of the IT organization.
Quick question. Did that change a lot of roles, like job descriptions and roles?
Yes, definitely. So when you really go this large scale path, you should definitely at some point in time think about whether you need something like a cloud competence center. Don't worry about the name. So whether you need a dedicated team for a certain time frame, which really builds up the cloud-related skills, which can support projects and programs moving to the cloud and so on. And this, at least in some of the transformations, led then to the introduction of new roles and new competencies and so on. Whether you need that for the whole time, that is always the question. But there is definitely one point you need to consider whether you need such a core team, building up and spreading the skills, and maybe you can dissolve that later when you are really, from the whole organization's perspective, into the cloud.
Okay, good.
Excellent. So you mentioned in the beginning also the cloud strategy, and now kind of like the cloud office, or I think it's similar to what Gene also referred to as like the digital transformation office or things like that. So some organizational aspect. What other parts do you in your experience are key to a successful large scale cloud transformation?
Yeah. So basically, you can think of 5 perspectives on this topic. So first of all, you can think of migrating applications to the cloud. So that's an obvious one. Another one is you're not just migrating applications to the cloud, but you're also changing then the application architecture, the technology architecture of those applications. The third one is this transformation of the IT organization, which I referred to earlier. And there are other perspectives like you need to transform also the business capability, meaning that you leverage the cloud to do your business differently. Yeah? And the last perspective from my point of view is the view on the data center. So what you're going to do with your data center, is that downsized, is that completely decommissioned, or whatever you want to do with your data center. And actually all those perspectives are integrated, right? So there are a lot of dependencies, and you need to deal with that.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of like, and that's why kind of like I put in this question here from our audience. You mentioned kind of like the business side and the business capability.
Yeah.
So I think that's also perfectly with the question here from Stephanie, how to involve also the commercial departments of a company into the transformation. Normally, the transformation starts in the technical departments.
Yeah. That's a very good question. So when you consider the commercial department or the commercial processes as part of the IT organization, how are you going to deal with, for example, cost allocation and cost distribution and stuff like that? You need to integrate the cloud world, in the existing one, So hopefully you have something in place, which you use to calculate and assign, allocate, and your cost to infrastructure application whatsoever. And basically, when you go to the cloud, you need to integrate the costs produced or created in the cloud in this schema, right? So there are certain challenges, like you have the pay-as-you-use model. So that's not within a data center where you, for example, request some hardware and then it's just get deprecated for, 5 years. So it needs more flexibility. But in the end, you need to integrate both views. And in the end, you need to really change then your processes around that. In this case, we're talking about the cost management, or just recently that is maybe called FinOps.
Yep. It's a US term. Don't laugh. Everybody's using it.
I'm laughing because when we are dealing with that, FinOps, cost management.
Yeah.
Because that's the way you deal with your cost management.
Yeah.
And then there's another perspective on the tools. Just recently I learned, so now that's called FinOps.
Yep. So quick question. This is maybe a bit off, but a couple years ago, I had a client who they were marching down. They had a great strategy. They were rolling out things. They were moving stuff to the cloud and doing a very good job. And then one of their business partners or commercial partners decided they wanted to use a different provider completely.
Yeah.
And they went along with it. And I mean, the enterprise architecture group was like, they were throwing Post-it notes in the air at that point. Have you run into things like that? Or, I mean, it was just chaos. I mean, it settled down, but it was, nobody really looked at the cost or the effort or the impact. I guess that comes back to a governance problem. I don't know.
You're referring to the cloud providers, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, in this major transformation, I referred to at the beginning, there was clearly from the beginning a true provider strategy. So you have to put that into context. So we're talking about 2014 and the years where the cloud was there, but it was maybe not that mature as it is then today. And this true cloud strategy provider approach really increased the speed of the program, because both providers were highly motivated to bring workloads, applications to the cloud. So when we would have chosen just one, of course, you stick to one provider. However, it is of course a challenge, and you commit to bring applications there, and once you are there is some sort of vendor lock-in. But to be honest, when you have an outsourcing provider or if you have your own data center, you also have some sort of lock-in. There's always the opportunity to try to be encapsulated or try to do not couple so closely, maybe moving to some generic technology like Kubernetes and so on, but that would mean that you cannot do specific services. So I would say it really depends. And the key from my perspective here is that you need to have a close look on your architecture, on your requirements and your costs and so on. And you really have to take conscious decisions. And then you hopefully do not run in this situation where you have a lot of stuff at one provider and then you need to move all your stuff to the other provider.
So do you think? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Karsten.
No, you continue, and because I have a slightly different angle.
So would you recommend that to always have a twofold strategy then, so that you may have to switch, or that you should have a couple providers and use them in alignment, or
just to make that like even a little bit broader, what do you see as kind of like main challenges or main like key takeaways for those transformations? Sorry, just to like, maybe it's not just the provider, maybe it's also something else where you say, this is not the big problem, something else is a bigger problem.
So maybe briefly answer that question. So it really depends. It maybe is also related to the overall size of the transformation. You cannot probably afford to have two providers or even more. So that's why I would say try to start with one and then keep an eye and whether it makes sense to, for example, put one portfolio of applications here and another portfolio of applications there. But we always have to consider then how each application is embedded in the landscape and so on. So it's quite complicated. And to be honest, when you look into the major providers at the moment, I don't think that there are really major differences. So
okay.
And when you, for example, take AWS, Google, and Azure, they compare very well. And I think maybe it's driven by your business relationships here, which you already have established with certain providers and so on. Okay. Coming back to Karsten's question, jumping around here. So what is the key challenge? So I think from all those perspectives I just listed, the transformation of the IT organization is really the key point, because that has a lot of dependencies and therefore a lot of complexity. And of course, I need to stress that this one is relevant when you are doing then this large scale transformation. It's not
Mm.
when you are moving with one or two applications to the cloud. It's really when you go all in, or you take really a portfolio of applications and application landscapes and bring that to the cloud.
Cool. Very good. Um, you you mentioned kind of like the cloud, or like an assessment, or like do you like, and your also client
Yeah.
engagements, do you go with like the 6 Rs or 7 Rs for, I think Gartner moved it from 5 to 6 or 7, I already
Yeah.
forgot, like the retain, rehost, replatform, rebuild, retire. And I think retire is very often kind of like forgotten, or not as much in the focus, but I think it gives you kind of like a very good opportunity to save money and save also the whole hassle to move to the cloud.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, what's kind of like from an approach? Is that still something you do? Cloud assessments with your current application landscapes? Are the 6 Rs helpful?
So I personally focus on this transformation of the IT organization.
Hmm.
That was triggered then by the program, and during the years, I wrapped the head around this set of transformations, my head around that, yeah, and I took an engineering perspective, or you can say an architecture perspective on that. And in the end, um, I really nailed down all the things you have to do to 21 decisions or designs you have to deal with when you are doing such a large scale transformation. So what do I mean by that? So there is, for example, a design like a cloud strategy, yeah, and the cloud strategy itself that has certain design decisions, yeah, and whether you want to move this way or that way, what steps you are taking into the cloud, and so on. And there are others like, what about a cloud competence center? Do you need such a cloud competence center? What are the roles, responsibilities, and where do you put that in the organization, and so on? And there are more of those decisions and designs. And actually, the 21, they stretch from strategy to the operations. So there's a pretty encompassing, although it's short and crisp view on that, and you can use that to further iterate and do some gap analysis of an organization. And out of that, you can shape, for example, a set of work packages and activities, which then represent your individual way into the cloud. Because one thing is for sure, yeah, let me stress that there won't be just one way into the cloud. So every organization is different, and therefore each cloud journey will also be different.
So are you publishing that soon, or do we get to look at it first?
Not really publishing, yeah, but if you're interested, yeah, just get in touch with me. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
A lot of knowledge and experience went into that. It's actually a tool, a framework, an assessment framework embedded in a workshop format. Yeah, and you can use that either to find your first way, your first steps into the cloud, or you can also use that when you want to ramp up then your cloud usage, or you want to really transform the organization. That's what it's made for.
That sounds super. Very
Awesome.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, this is also, I think, a good point to say. There is the webinar where you get to know like some peaks on this. I guess, Stefan, on in
Yes.
two weeks from today, we'll be going to like a little bit deeper on those 21
Anyone?
topics, which I love, because it's like halfway to 42, Lean 42. So, but no, so sign up. I think we will like post also in the comment here the sign up for the webinar. It's also posted on LinkedIn, or any of the other platforms you might listen to here. So I can only recommend going to that. But if you also wanted to say, if you do have questions from the audience, feel free to kind of like ask those. Also, I just see Nan actually posted already the link to the event coming up in 2 weeks. So do that. But I do have like one more question for what, because I think you're also doing or helping like clients with those cloud transformations. Can you? I know kind of like you will ask them to join the webinar and learn more about this, but also how does like a engagement with you look like? How can they get in touch with you? What's kind of like the
Yeah.
What's the process?
So the process is basically I'm offering this workshop format, and it's leveraging then this framework, yeah, which is basically this fit gap framework. So typically there is a preparation phase where we then screen and then we browse through some of the existing documents, like a cloud strategy, like your organization, whether there's a cloud competence or not. So that is taking a tap into the organization and finding out, so what is the current status and where we should focus. So there's a quite encompassing framework, and typically an organization has a starting point, and then the next steps is like focusing on this particular set of designs and decisions. So that is referred to like customizing. Yeah, so you can take the framework, you can set specific focus, and then you actually run the workshop. Yeah, and after that you come out with a set of gaps, and you can derive then some logical work packages and activities, and then implement those maybe as a part of a change program or project.
Great. And with those or your experience there is kind of like the biggest hurdle in kind of like the technology piece to move things to the cloud? Is it kind of like the people and their kind of like resistance to kind of like the change, or like we spoke in the beginning, kind of like the new roles, new responsibilities, or is it like the third part to make it work as an organization and have kind of like the correct setup from an organization point of view?
As an architect, I say it depends. Or it really depends on the organization. It really depends, let's say, how you are connected, or what is your current setup in relation to data center and any outsourcing provider, outsourcing contracts, and stuff like that. There's another dependency in relation to the application portfolio, of course. So how does this look like? And we're talking about a lot of applications, complicated applications, or a more or less harmonized landscape and so on. So there are really several factors which, in the end, will tell you where you should focus.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no, as I said, there's no standardized way into the cloud. You really need to find your way. And then, of course, then you can consider the other aspects like the application portfolio, what you're going to do with the application technology architecture. And then finally, what about your data centers? Yeah? Can you downsize those? Will you commission them completely? What is your way forward in this whole picture?
Yeah, I think the it depends is not only an architect, so it's also from a consulting point of view. It's also a very good word, but I think it also speaks to how we kind of like help organizations, because it is something to navigate, but it always depends on where does the ship sort of like start, and what water does it want to sail in, and what's the wind, and where does it want to sail to. So all these factors play into role into how to guide and navigate. And I think your experience is outstanding in that field, Stefan. So highly recommend anybody that's interested in those transformations to reach out. I don't know. there's some from us. We also do have kind of like recordings of today. If you joined us late or want to see more of like what we previous had in the series, you can go to lean42.academy to get to know more about it. Also, I highly recommend to join us in 2 weeks for the webinar that goes a little bit more into the details. I don't think you will show all 21 aspects, but you will highlight some of them.
So there was a comment that just came in about whether the framework will, I'm sorry, will the framework also help if the company is already using the cloud?
Yes, so you can use it to kickstart your cloud journey, but you can also use it to assess and plan the next steps. Yeah? So when you're already in, or you want to scale, or you want to bring more into the cloud, yeah, you can also leverage that.
Excellent. I also
Great,
think
thank you.
there is no organization out there that is not already using the cloud to some extent. You use software as a service to some extent. I'm pretty sure. Like even the most restricted organizations that I've come across are using mail or like a calendar, like some aspect they use cloud services.
Yeah, I agree to that. Definitely, there will be some software as a service in place, and when you consider that also as cloud, which some maybe don't, because that's just a subscription, for example. It is finally, it is cloud. You are using in the cloud, and when you're doing then Office 365, for example, you at least with that communication, email collaboration in the cloud.
Quick question on your workshop, the 21 points that you're going to go over. Does any of that touch governance, the governance of the cloud?
Actually, there are several ones. Touching governance. So those decision and designs, they are grouped into perspectives, and one perspective is governance. There is, for example, things like how you're gonna leverage the organizational elements of a cloud provider to classify and structure your cloud services, your cloud instances. There are other perspectives like how do you tag or how do you define policies and monitor them in the cloud and stuff like that. So that is a quite encompassing part of that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Excellent.
I'm interested in that one.
Well, then to wrap it up, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your insight, Stefan. We're looking forward to a more in-depth discussion in 2 weeks. And sign up for the webinar, sign up for the Lean42 Academy, learn more about this, but also other topics in CIO, IT strategy, IT leadership, enterprise architecture. And hope to see some of you again soon. And thank you for participating.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Jean and Karsten.
Thank you. Apologize, I was late.
Okay.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.